I've seen all 4 episodes of Marvel Zombies, which is the MCU's first TVMA animated series. It continues the What If Zombies episode and follows a new generation of Marvel heroes as they battle against the Marvel Universe zombified. This is just going to be my initial reaction to the series. Like I said, there's 4 episodes. All 4 episodes released on Disney Plus this week. They're all rated TVMA, and they've stated that this series was actually meant to be a movie, but then because of rights stuff with Sony, Spider-Man, and Marvel, this was turned into a mini-series. And in terms of the protagonistic features of this series, it does feel like it was meant to be a movie arc. The protagonist of this entire movie slash show is Kamala Khan, and I think that is such an interesting protagonist to have, especially in this deteriorating world of Marvel Zombies. The one character that's whole life goal is to just be an Avenger while all of the Avengers are falling. That's such an interesting premise to me. It's about Kamala's journey to becoming a hero, and I think making her the protagonist at least has some level of good emotional core, because I don't really think the band of Avengers slash characters they bring together is necessarily the most emotionally compelling. At least Kamala has a good core to that. I will say though, even though I wasn't a fan of the Marvels, I was a pretty big fan of Miss Marvel as a series, so I'm a little biased, I guess. Kamala does go through a lot in this show, and even the creators have described it as somewhat of like a Frodo Baggins of the story, and I completely agree. She's going through so many trials and tribulations, and she's just such a likable character that makes it feel worth it. I won't say much else about her character because this is an initial reaction, but I will say that I think the fact they bring together the Marvel Zombies What If episode and this storyline makes a little bit of sense. They don't really bring in the Thanos aspect really soon, so the stakes aren't really the same, but at least it introduces Spider-Man and stuff like that, which is pretty cool to me. I know a lot of people are very excited for the TVMA rating, but to me, up until really the final episodes, the last 30 minutes, which in a film would be the final act of the movie, it doesn't really feel like it's rated TVMA. The first 3 episodes kind of start with introductions that are set prior to the time jump within the series, and they really do a great job of introducing characters and why they're in this current situation. I think all of that is great, and in those moments, they're able to be using the TVMA rating. And even though the final act is absolutely awesome, they never really do what TVMA is meant to do, in my opinion, which is use blood for not necessarily shock value, but also upping the stakes. In the final act, 100% they do that. This criticism is not for that. But for the first hour and a half of this series, they don't really use any blood or gore or really zombies to their fullest potential. Also, it's not really Marvel Zombies because the zombies aren't as coherent as they are in the comics, in my opinion, which just makes them feel like lifeless NPCs you're killing in the video game on like a side mission. Maybe that's just me though. We know who the villain is from the trailers, but I won't specifically talk about that character right here because this is an initial reaction. I can't get into too many specifics, but I do think the villain is done very, very well. And I think it's so interesting because that character could use that same exact storyline in the live action movies. Like if they were to do a zombies movie, which Kevin Feige repeatedly said he wanted to do a long time ago, they just didn't do it for demographic reasons. It would be such a cool idea, especially going off of the way that character is not in the MCU anymore, bringing them back, doing a whole Marvel Zombies story. I don't think this protagonist, this band of characters would have worked as well in live action just because they don't really have any emotional stakes together, but that villain, it would have been really cool. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about after you see, I believe, the 3rd episode. But I do think the core antagonistic aspect and the core protagonistic aspect, they work really well in terms of the movie arc of it all. This is technically a spawned in spin-off of what If is because it's from What If Zombies, and so there's some characters that are alternate versions of what they are in the MCU, which is super interesting to me. There's also some versions of storylines and variants that they're able to tweak within the buildup of this world that has these zombie-fied MCU characters in them, and so there's a bunch of unique, different storylines going on top of the fact that it's already Marvel Zombies, which is a unique storyline in and of itself. I think Thor's character is really interesting, but most notably, of course, in the trailers, and everyone on Twitter is talking about it, Moon Knight Blade, which is Mahershala Ali's technically debut in the MCU, if I'm not mistaken. We'll take what we can get, I guess. His scenes are absolutely awesome. I know everyone's looking forward to that. And in terms of cool characters, the back half of this show, once it starts to get into a flow of actual story that it's telling between Kamala and the villain and how the villain affects Kamala's past and stuff like that, it just becomes a bunch of sick ass reveals using tangents of MCU stuff that you just wouldn't really expect. So it's a really cool mix of what if is and what zombies is. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is like a Marvel Zombies comic come to fruition, I guess, in animated form. It's not really that, which I know that's kind of what I wanted, but they still do unique things when since it's taking place in the MCU. It feels like with the animation is where I had initially the most thoughts because it's like the first thing you see. I think it's fine. Like, I don't really like the what if style of animation, and I was really harsh on Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the Spider-Man series that came out this past January, and I thought that was kind of weird. But the more I saw that series, though I think the city looked empty or characters looked a little bit odd and designs weren't perfect, I'm very excited for season 2, and the animation has always been growing on me as I see it more and more and more. It's never grown on me since What If. I don't really like the direction they went in, but it feels like they were kind of boxed in, other than the final episode, which they do some really cool stuff with a mixture of different animation styles. The What If style mixed with other 2D and 3D animation in bits and pieces. I'll stop right there. But it is really, really cool. And that final episode, I don't want it to... I'm trying not to let it bias my entire score, but again, this is an initial reaction, so my score might change later down the line. The final episode, it just ends on such a bang, and it does set up a season 2. I know a lot of people like to ask that in the comments of initial reactions. It does set up a season 2 with a similar villain, similar protagonist. This is something I would like to see more of. This is a series where if it's another 4 episodes, that's all we're getting, I don't mind. That's something I'll take. It's not to say that I love the band of characters. To me, and this is kind of my fear with Doomsday, it feels like how botched the lineup will probably be in Doomsday in terms of these characters have no emotional connection together, but individually they're interesting characters, so they're kind of going to inherently be cool on screen together. But I don't really mind in terms of Marvel Zombies because it's already a tangent of what's going on in What If. A movie would be ideal, 100%. Like, get Spider-Man out of here. I don't really care because we also have Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, so that's whatever to me. I would love an hour-and-a-half long animated movie. That would be absolutely amazing. But that wraps up my initial thoughts on Marvel Zombies. Again, 4 30-minute episodes dropping on Disney Plus this week. I can't really think of a score to give it. I don't really know how to judge it, if I'm going to judge it as a show or a movie, but right now it's like the most average MCU thing ever. I think the final act, episode 4, is absolutely amazing, but other than that, it's really just epitome of MCU humor with like really cool characters, and that's about it. That wraps up all my thoughts on Marvel Zombies. When it comes out this week, I would love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.